Welcome back to another Eidolon hunting tutorial with TS Terra. In today's video, I want to be going over just general concepts of how to build your Warframe for Eidolon hunts, mostly for solo and beginning level of hunting. So in this video, what I'm going to cover is just general Warframe building concepts, along with what Warframes to bring in an Eidolon hunt, particularly if you're by yourself, and how to capture Terra list for the most part, how to expand upon that, and then just towards the end of the video, I'll go over and actually showcase capturing Terra list with Volt and Oberon, the two frames that I believe are the best for beginners in any tri-cap scenario or for solo work. So to start off, I have a Mirage here that I'm going to use. DE was very kind a long time ago, for whatever reason, gave quite a few people a free Mirage Prime, and this is not the one that I've used for any of my Eidolon hunts. It's just something that's been sitting in my arsenal, and I think it would be a really great thing to just have to show off for this video of concepts of building a frame. So what I want to go over is just basic building concepts that when I talk to people, it doesn't seem like everyone fully gets. Most people understand the whole top part of a Warframe, your armor, your energy, your health, your shields. That all makes a lot of sense to people. But I've noticed what confuses people more, for whatever reason, is the bottom stuff. Bottom stuff is important. Your duration, efficiency, range, and strength. That's all stuff you, while learning the game, especially for Eidolon hunts, you want to really dive into and understand how all of these things affect your skills and what ways they affect things. I've ran across a lot of people that just have really weird setups, and I ask them, like, why are you running range on something that doesn't require range? And again, for certain things, a lot of people don't build just for Eidolon hunts, and I get that. But I highly suggest to min-max your builds, take a configuration slot, and build it for just Eidolons. Don't bring the build into other places. You don't want to waste any mod slots, and really understand what's going on. So to break these 4 categories down, duration is basically how long your skill will last if it is a duration based skill. If it's an efficiency based skill, duration doesn't matter in sense of time, it matters in sense of energy, which leads on to what efficiency does. And efficiency also affects efficiency based skills that are more channeling. You lose energy per second with them, and efficiency also makes it cost less energy to cast a skill. So higher efficiency, less energy to cost. Lower efficiency, more energy to cost. Range affects your skill of how far the skill goes out. If, let's say, you're trying to use Smite and your range is 5 meters and you have the augment on, only people in a radius of 5 meters will get your Smite infusion. Makes common sense, I feel, but do you know some skills are not affected by range? For instance, Mirage's Hall of Mirrors, you can add all the range in the world, it's not really going to make a difference to the skill. A skill like Sleight of Hand, though, that has a radius, the range will matter. So that's all stuff to kind of take in count of. Some skills do have a fixed range. Trinity's Blessing, for instance, doesn't matter if you have no range or max range, it is stuck at whatever the affinity range is, and that's it. So the next thing is strength, and this is where a lot of people get confused, and that's basically how much damage a skill allows you to do. So we're gonna take Eclipse for this example, and we're gonna look and see Our drain is 25, our duration's 10, our damage increases 115%. So, if we go through, and basically when you're solo Eidolon hunting, you want to build duration up if you feel you need it, for however long you need this buff to last. If you're by yourself, you don't have to worry about the buff lasting on other people or doing all the work. It doesn't matter. You just need enough of duration for what amount of time you need to pop the limb. Because that's what we're building these skills for, is to allow us to have enough damage to break the Eidolon's limb and to finish it in the end phase. So, for me personally, I do not need a high duration. For someone who's maybe a bit more new, you might want to consider having a bit more duration to get used to how long it takes you to pop the limb. Of course, common sense, longer time it takes you to pop the limb, more duration you may want to consider, or maybe consider the opposite and have a bit higher efficiency so you're not worried about, losing all your energy to recast the skill several times. These are the things to consider. Again, personally, I do not build too much duration. I usually know how long I like my skills to last to where I need to pop them again. And when you're by yourself, you want to pop the limb with as much damage. I feel that makes it go quicker. And you might need to consider bringing energy pads because some Eidolon builds get very, very energy hungry. So the next part of Eclipse would be the actual damage portion. I would suggest on almost every build ever building damage, run Umbral Intensify if you have it maxed. Umbral Intensify always gets a bonus over what Intensify is. If you look, a max Intensify is only 30, a maxed Umbral Intensify is 44. The other Umbral mods are not as useful by themselves. If we look, Vitality is 440 health, Steel Fiber is 110 armor. Umbral Vitality is 440 health, Umbral Fiber is 110 armor. So the Umbral mods, besides Intensify, are 100% the same. Besides that, these cost more capacity. So that's a lot of things to take in consideration, not just for Eidolon builds, or for any Warframe build. Anytime I see anyone running a solo Umbral Vitality on their build, I ask them why. You literally gain nothing besides tower resistance. And at that point, if you're running just one Umbral mod, I do not think you're running for Tricaps. Because almost always, I see Umbral Intensify in every build I do for Tricaps or solo. Because damage is just needed. Thing is, the cool thing when you stack your Umbral mods, they do increase. So Umbral Vitality and Umbral Fiber start to become more useful as you stack. So you can go with a double build. I would always suggest Intensify, and then your choice of more health or more armor. And if you want to see all three of them stacked together, that is the max amount of bonus you can get out of these three mods. I typically don't run triple as it's very expensive, as you see. So Umbral Vital and Umbral Intensify are usually my go-to for more health and more strength. Now if we come over and look at my Eclipse, I have 178% more damage. That allows me to do a lot more damage, still decent duration, and honestly, 25 energy drain isn't too bad. So knowing all these concepts of understanding how this stuff changes and works is kind of important. And next thing is, I'm going to take Prime Continuity off now. I'm going to show Blind Rage. That brings me up to 254 strength now. That also makes my efficiency go down to 45. To where now if I use Eclipse, it's going to cost me about 13.75 extra energy, but it brings my damage up so much more. And this is something when considering what you're trying to get your frame to do. Because Eclipse giving that amount of damage just skyrockets. And again, this is unranked or rank 0 Eclipse. Of course, the damage goes up when it gets to rank 3. The duration goes up. All of that goes up. So that's something to also consider, that even though you're using up a lot of energy to maybe cast it, as long as you pop that limb before the skill goes away and before the Eidolon screams for zombies to come, it doesn't really matter how much energy you're using, because you can get that energy back by placing energy pads down. Now, some people might not feel comfortable with that, and that's okay, because you can still make efficient Eidolon hunt builds, but you might just not be as fast as you want to go. So that's where it comes to balancing act. That is a basic rundown of how these 4 things affect your skills and what to consider when you're building for Eidolon hunts. The next thing to notice is arcanes. And if you're new to Eidolon hunts and you haven't been playing for a while, you might not have as much. But here's the cool thing. The most important arcane that I'm going to suggest for any beginner Eidolon hunter is Arcane Nullifier. It's a bronze. That means killing the Terrorist will have a chance of granting you this arcane. This whole tutorial, all my videos were basically building up to this point, is that I want people to run solo Terrorist and start building up Arcane Nullifiers, because this is the arcane you're going to want to use when you're first learning. When the Eidolon screams after you pop any limb, it's going to burst out damage if you haven't noticed, and that damage is magnetic damage. And if you've ever been running around on the plains or Orbalis and you fall into water, you notice the water makes you take magnetic damage and you lose your energy, and it's just not fun. That's what the Eidolon gel does. Is not only does it do a lot of damage, it hits you with magnetic proc, which makes you lose a lot or all of your energy. This prevents that. A rank 5 of this makes that all go away. You'll still get hit with hard damage, it'll still hurt, but you won't lose your energy. And that's very important. There are other ways around this, but for new players or new TriCat people, I highly suggest running Arcane Nullifier. The next one I would suggest, my personal preference to more new people, Arcane Guardian. It's a solid arcane. You don't need a rank 5, but more armor when you're damaged is always useful. And then outside of that, once you start getting comfortable, you can decide to not run Arcane Guardian, you can decide to not run Arcane Nullifier, and there are other arcanes you can run that just increase the damage to rifles, increase the damage to pistols, increase damage to melees, whatever you use to break the limb. There's an arcane most likely out there to help increase crit, reload speed, damage, something else you could swap them out for. But that's getting into more complex builds that down the road I'll get into. When you're starting out, you're most likely not going to have those. If you're a returning player that's done a ton of raids before Eidolons, or you're doing events that gave away arcanes, you might have a lot of those good ones, and it's something to look into. But if you're brand new and you're like, man, I really don't have that many arcanes, you're definitely going to want to try and hunt down Arcane Nullifier and Arcane Guardian to begin with. So that's the basics of building your frame. Now let's go over what frames I would suggest to run any Eidolon hunt. I did say, for the most part, Volt and Oberon are, in my opinion, the best starting frames, and I will stand by that. If you watch a lot of my videos, you see me running Mirage. I love running Mirage for Eidolons. She's very powerful, great frame. I would not suggest it to newer players. Mirage has had a reputation of being up and down for Eidolon hunts, depending what they want to do with Eclipse on the plains. So, right now it works out great. I love it. It's not always going to work. If we go to the top though, and we're going to go through, Chroma is another frame you can consider. Chroma is fantastic because he gives crazy damage buff, he gives crazy armor, you can heal yourself a bit, and you can subsume some stuff to give him more damage. Subsuming with the helmet is another thing that's changed Eidolon hunts from before. You'll notice that most of my frames I run Smite Infusion. I'll go over a bit more with the helmet system in a bit, but for right now, if you have nothing else but a Chroma, he's a solid frame. He is a bit trickier to run now that there is no self damage, so you will have to stay on top of your buff, recasting it before losing it, and if you lose it, taking damage without dying to get your buff back up from the Eidolon can make the runs, especially by yourself, potentially go longer. But overall, he's a solid frame that can solo track out. And I will release a video of all these other frames later on as we go on. But right now I want to keep it more to the basics for new people who are breaking into Eidolon hunts. The next frame that I would suggest is potentially Haro. I've not seen too many people solo hunt with Haro, but his fourth giving out crit to a team is something to note that is very helpful and powerful, especially when popping limbs and for end phase. Ivara is another frame who can Eidolon hunt. A lot of people might say, Taro, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Artemis Bow does a ton of damage, and she does have damage multipliers. Again, I'll do a video with her doing it, but definitely not something I would suggest anyone try to really solo, especially if you're new, but it can be kind of fun. The next frame, Mirage. You've seen all the gameplay. I've talked enough about Mirage. Oberon, very, very useful frame. I want to preview Oberon's skills. That doesn't let me preview. Alright, Oberon's skills. Smite Infusion gives radiation bonus to weapons if you have the augment, which is very important. It's very useful. As well as Oberon's great for the fact of hollow grounds, allowing to make it so you take no status damage or get not affected by status. So hollow grounds actually allows you to not have to run Arcane Nullifier for the scream, as well as when you combo hollow grounds with renewal, then not only do you get more armor, but you can heal yourself. So Oberon's a great support frame in teams, by yourself, as well as Smite Infusion's a great damage buff. And his fourth isn't really useful for Eidolon hunts, so you have a skill you can get rid of in the helmet system if you want to do something specific for Eidolons. You can add Eclipse, you can add Roar, lots of ideas that you can add to Oberon to just make him a really good all-around or solo frame for Eidolons. The next one is Rhino. Rhino's a bit more old school like Chroma. He does have Iron Skin, allowing you to have more armor, as well as he has Roar. Now Roar is not as powerful as Smite, Eclipse, or Chroma's buff, but Rhinos can pop limbs. I've seen less and less, but it is doable, and if you got nothing else, well, look into putting some Forma into him and you can make him a good Eidolon hunt build. The next frame is Trinity. Trinity is more known for support due to Blessing. Blessing heals your teammates, it heals the lores, and that's almost about it for Trinity. The other thing is, they did release a augment recently for Trin that when you bless, the amount of health you bless adds crit, which now allows her to more comfortably solo tri-cap if you choose to. I do not have the augment, I've personally not tested it, but I have a few friends who have, and they say it works great. Again, I would not suggest solo Trin for a new player for solo tri-cap, but if you're with a group of friends that have done it before and they ask you to bring Trin, don't take it as of, oh, I can't do anything else. Trin's a great support. One of the only frames that can heal the lures and keep your teammates alive, as well as blessing's almost the only skill important on Trin for Eidolon hunts, so it's very easy to build for just blessing, as well as you can then remove any of the other skills and give her Eclipse, give more damage, give her Smite Infusion. Smite Infusion allows you to give more buffs to your team and just make the run smoother. So definitely a great frame to bring, especially if you're running with a group. Solo, a little more trick that it takes involved. Volt. Volt is the next frame and the last frame I'm going to talk about for Eidolon hunts. Volt has several skills that are very useful. His first, Shock, is very powerful, especially because it gives electricity damage. And anything we've learned from the past videos is that the Eidolons are weak to radiation, and radiation is a combination of electricity and fire. So that electricity does boost your damage quite a bit. As well as Volt shields increase your damage and crit damage. They also help the amps do more damage. So now when you have the shield, you got a buff to your operator in a way, you got a buff to your weapon, as well as Volt's speed. Having speed be able to make any weapon that has a charge shot like the Lanka or the Epitaph charge faster helps you pop the limbs faster. So Volt is probably the most well known for solo tri-caps and some of the fastest runs I've seen done with Volt, as well as you can replace his fourth for, again, any other ability that gives you another damage multiplier. Volt and Oberon are the two most probably best to learn solo tri-cap with. So now I want to go over the helmet system, for those who haven't used it too much. Basically, when you subsume a frame, you gain a specific ability. As you can see, when you subsume any Mirage, you gain Eclipse. You cannot subsume Primes, let me throw that out there. Eclipse is diminished, so when you go and put this skill, you don't get that full 150%, it's actually less. But Eclipse isn't a bad skill to put on a frame if you don't have anything else. Empowered gives you more power strength. If you have literally nothing else, you can, on almost every frame, I believe there's a skill you can remove for Eidolon hunts and give them empowered. This would be my last choice, but it's an option. The next skill that really would make a difference is Roar. Again, Roar is diminished. The damage is not the same as if running Rhino. But if you don't have Eclipse, it's still better than that other power strength one because it's a multiplier, not just an addition. Shock from Volt. Shock is very similar to Smite Infusion. It's just electricity damage instead of radiation. It's probably the best choice under Smite Infusion because it is not diminished damage and it's almost up to par with Smite Infusion. Smite is the best choice. It is not damage diminished, so when you put it on any frame, you're getting the full version of Smite, just as if you were running Oberon. Yes, the downfall to Shock and Smite is you have to run their augment, but honestly, the amount of multiplier you'll get from Smite Infusion is worth that -1 mod space. If you really do not like losing that mod space from these two, I would suggest Eclipse or Roar. Again, it's diminished, so it's not the best in my opinion, but doable. So that's just the basics of building your Warframe and kind of concepts to go over building specifically for tricaps. You want to build for these abilities that I mentioned, and any of the other abilities you can leave on your frame, but it's just not useful. You want to be able to output as much damage, and like I said, consider how much time you need to pop a limb before recasting your buff. You don't have to worry about, in my opinion, like, you don't need Eclipse or Smite Infusion to last 60 seconds, because honestly, it should be, you know, when you're by yourself, cast ability, pop limb, go back into operator to prep for breaking shields, break shields to go back into Warframe, and usually recast. So the way I build is just for that one instance of popping limb. You could attempt a longer duration. The problem with that is you will most likely be sacrificing damage, which means it might take longer to pop the limb. Again, when you can just solve that solution with, if you're worried about your energy, build some energy pads. Especially some of the higher runs and certain frames, energy pads and Eidolon hunts are probably going to be your friend. Like I said, that's the basic concept. I maybe eventually will get into sharing builds, but as of right now, I am going to hide the screen, or I'll cut this portion out, because I don't want to just show builds. I want this to be a teaching experience for people to think in their own what they need to put on their frame to make it successful. If I get into more specific complicated builds like Avara, I might start showing off some stuff then. But for this, like I said, as a fact that I want to keep it more of, this is the basic concepts, understand these concepts, and then create your own stuff, because the builds aren't very complicated. I'm going to start off with Oberon, and take down the Terra list with Oberon, and then I'll switch over to Volt. As you can see, I'm running Rubico, Epitaph, and Redeemer. I'll probably just stick with doing everything on the Epitaph. Alright. From this point on, the video is mostly going to be just going in and, like I said, taking down Terra list. Any concepts you see used on Terra list are the same as the other two. They just require more damage, they dish out more damage, and understanding, you know, how many lures you need to capture. As you can see already, I do run Eclipse on both my Oberon and my Volt. Since Oberon already has Smite Infusion, there's really no point of not running Eclipse. And there's realistically, like, I could run the other infusion. I've actually ran the electric infusion on them. I do not like the slowness of the casting of it. For whatever reason, I feel there's a delay in cast, and that's my preference. But you could run the electricity as well. Let's see if there's any bombies. Does not look like it. Maybe. Nope. Alright. One thing it's important noting with Oberon is understanding. Oh, I have this amp. Alright. Oh. It's important to know, as I was saying with Oberon, that you want to know when to cast hollow grounds, and I'll go over that in this video as well. If you were to choose to not want to have to run the Arcane Nullifier, or if you just don't have Arcane Nullifier. A lot of people when they're starting out do not have a full rank 5 Arcane Nullifier. So at this point, I know the Eidolon's about to lose its shields. What I typically do is I would go into my Warframe, give myself my energy, and pop my buffs. As you can see, both of them have at least 20-ish seconds. I know the limbs are now available to shoot. My buffs are still up, and the limb is now gone. So that's ideally how I go around. You would want to cast Hollow Ground now, and then you do not take that magnetic damage. But you still take damage, as you see. But I don't lose any of my energy that I have. So that's how Hollow Ground works, and that's how I roughly cast my buffs. So I like to cast them right as the Eidolon's about to, right as the shields are about to break. That's not good. To go on the long hunt to finding the Terrorist. Meow. This is why you always want to charge your lures. Take it from me. Maybe he popped back up. If this happens while you are ever running your track apps, I suggest staying kind of low to the ground. Get to areas that have water as quick as you can, because the Terrorist always has, any of them have to spawn near the water, and Terrorist is very, very short, so it's very easy to just fly past him. Kind of want to like skim the areas. mountains. There he is. As I said, very short. I don't even want to know how many times I probably flew over top of him. That is also a good example of why Chroma can be very scary to run with, due to the fact that right there, any Chroma throughout that time of me looking for him, I would have not been able to keep my buffs up at all. But other frames like Volt, Oberon, Mirage, basically anyone else, it's not really too bad. You're not worried about like long timers, and you know, as soon as you cast your buff, you get the max buff. You don't have to build it up with damage like Chroma's. And back when Chroma was self-damageable, it's a little different. Had a lot more freedom. Now it's definitely a lot more strict for Chroma players. Alright. This is the difference of casting buffs out of order. Is that I wasted all that time and I don't even have the right buff out. And so it's very important to cast your buffs. You can also hide in your Tenno at this point. And as you see, I'll come back in and I still have my energy. That's due to the fact of having Arcane Nullifier. If you do not have Nullifier, you will most likely lose your energy. Alright, let's try not to lose this time, as I literally did the same mistake twice. Fantastic. Oh, there he is. Lucky this time. Checking the waters is very important. Alright, so I would pop my buffs. Get the shot off. And then we're good to go to the next one. Again, if you want to sit and Oberon, can. You see between all of this stuff with Renewal, Hollow Ground, you don't have to worry about going down depending on your build, but again, I personally like to sit in my Tenno and just let Arcane Nullifier do its job. But if you want more damage, you know, swap the Arcanes up. But again, more new players face, get Arcane Nullifier. Once you get comfortable, you can start getting fancier. Pop my buffs. Drop the shields. Pop the wall. As you can see, I'm out of energy due to the fact of, you know, running Renewal. And so I want to pop some energy pads down. Almost any solo hunt, you're going to want to consider bringing energy pads due to you will run out of energy. Especially if you're going to attack app. They do not drop much energy, and it's do not pray that they're going to give you energy. For final phase, I am going to use my Redeemer. And that is a capture. I used the Redeemer with Oberon on my final phase just because the Redeemer has a ton of output of bullets, and melees can run a lot more crit than primaries, so it's a lot easier to build up to red crits, along with the fact that Oberon, you don't have to actually build radiation on any of your weapons if you don't want to, and melees actually have quite a few crit increasing mods. That full crit build with radiation from Oberon makes the Redeemer very powerful. I'm now gonna switch over to Volt and show kind of like a playstyle with Volt. Also gonna switch my amp. The amp I was using is made from Madurai, and I want my Unaru amp. Even though Volt is the one frame that you would want to run Madurai with out of everyone else, but it is not necessary.
of the world, hear this tune. Give it a time is now to break the trance. Do it up.
Other thing when building for Eidolon hunts is you do want to consider building a bit of tankiness as well. Good spawn. Good point. Eidolons do a lot of damage, so having stuff like, more health, more armor, sometimes useful. Having, I can't think of the one mod, it's escaped me. Alright, now that I got the two lures, go over to the Eidolon. Volt does use a lot more energy than other frames, so if you are going to run Volt, I highly suggest bringing energy pads, as that with Volt, you're going to want to place shields down, you can shock them, and then shooting through them allows more damage. As you can see, there is a process to lining the Volt shields up. As you can see, I'm hitting 300s way more consistently. And then between Shock Trooper or Eclipse, you get a very nice damage buff. As you can see, I want to say the bonuses are close to the same in duration? Oh no, I have a lot more duration on Volt. Volt, you do want to consider possibly building more duration for the shields, because you can't have your shields keep going down. And again, I've lost the Perilous in the Abyss. Typically you want to get up to the air a lot quicker, and then you can pinpoint where he spawns out of the lake. If you've seen any previous videos that I've done, you will notice that that's always what I do. And of course he spawned next to me and I'm just blind. More shields allows for more damage. It's very far away from me. Alright, I don't want to cast that and that definitely.
Energy's back. I advise falling back.
Go into my Arcwing. And this time try to really show off the Volt Shield with the Ant.
The terrorist retreats, but remains close by, wary of you.
So I want to aim some shields upwards, shock them, try to get my Another Wisp on back. And as you can see, the damage output is a lot higher with the Volt Shield on the amps. As well as you get damage buff from the shield for your weapon. Volt just has so many different buffs and is probably the one frame that I can easily say you can have all 4 of your skills be increasing to your damage. Even though his third doesn't really increase any damage, it just allows you to shoot quicker, which, as we know, if you want to do anything super fast, speed and damage is the way to go. And this is basically without Volt Shield now, and it still work, but I do need to still charge these lures to get the capture, but that's the basics of Eidolon hunting with Volt, is utilizing your shield, utilizing your shock trooper buff, utilizing your speed buff, along with his 4th isn't necessary in Eidolon hunts by any regard, so that is a open slot for swapping something out in the helmet. You do not need to swap anything out on any frame. All these frames can do it without any helmet abilities, but it can make your life easier, and why not?
Secure and employ additional Eidolon lures. Sentient Galactic container. You are closing on victory. Act now.
Charge. Typically you want to set up any bonuses like the shields prior by the Eidolons down and screaming. I was looking for volleys, but a lot of times you'll see a group of 4 people, you're like, hey, waypoint 1, they'll throw out a few shields, shock them up for extra damage, everyone will cast their buffs, and that's when you start seeing the really high skyrocket numbers on Eidolons. And yeah, that's, you know, a simple Terrorless capture with Volt and Oberon. In the future, I plan to do videos and full tri-caps with these frames, along with showing off some chroma stuff. I'll show off some, you know, maybe Titania, Avara. You guys probably seen plenty of Mirage in my videos. Again, Mirage is my most favorite. If you looking at the difference between my Mirage and Volt and my Oberon, you'll probably easily pick out and be like, yo, you do a lot better with Mirage, you're a lot faster. But that's just because Mirage is my most comfortable frame for Eidolons. But I can say that Mirage is not always the frame you want to rely on, because I've seen her easily go up and down in the tier list due to whether the devs want to leave Eclipse work at nighttime or not work, and realistically Eclipse is the only thing that really skyrockets Mirage. So that is the basics for today. One thing that I haven't talked about is the Discord link. The clan I am, we have renamed ourselves. We are officially Raven's Veil. And when you look at the bottom of this Discord, if you're not in the clan and you'd like to join, we are open to the public, so feel free to join the Discord and come chat with us. And if you're on Xbox and you don't have a clan, or you want to join a new clan that is working on being more active with some competitions and events, feel free to, as always, join the Discord, message me, and we'll get you an invite as soon as we can. The next videos I am looking to do is I am looking to actually host a clan contest, and I am hoping quite a few people will sign up. Basically, if you're watching this video and you're in the clan and you made it this far, the idea is that I want to host an Eidolon speed run for Terrorlist. The fastest 3 times will be rewarded some prizes, and I'm not going to release the prize list on here, but as I roll out more information about the event, the prize lists will be on there. And yeah, so that's about it. Have a good one, y'all.